Hello everyone, the long-anticipated director's cuts of Rebel Moon have arrived on Netflix. Child of Fire is now Chalice of Blood, and Scargiver is now Curse of Forgiveness. And I must say that these two cuts feel closer to a pure Zack Snyder film. Zack Snyder, whether you love him or hate him, he is a true auteur, and he never does the same film over and over, you know? All his films are pretty unique on their own, and he's a filmmaker that I greatly admire. I did check out the PG-13 cuts of Rebel Moon, and I enjoyed them despite their flaws, and some of the flaws are still there, but a lot of the flaws are fixed with the running time and the character development and interactions that the characters have with one another. In many ways, Rebel Moon's director's cuts aren't like the Snyder cut where it's a completely different director taking over and complete reshoots. This is more in line with the BVS Ultimate Edition or even the Watchmen director's cuts, where it's still pretty much the same structure, the same film, with added stuff that enhances the viewing experience. Out of the two films, I feel like part one, Chalice of Blood, is the most improved. There's so much in the first hour. If you've read the novels by V. Castro, seriously, there's a lot of stuff that was in there that we get to see in live action, and the Imperium is just pure evil. Like, there are bad guys before, but I hate them in this. They're just the most vile individuals on the face of the earth, and Ed Skrein is even more menacing as the villain Noble. We get more with Arius's background, with how he joined the Imperium, what happens with his family and father and his home worlds. We get to see what the Imperium does to different worlds across the galaxy, and it also helps show why it's so important that this farm world, this moon, that they must fight for their people, because it shows us exactly what the Imperium does and what they're capable of. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about this opening cut. It's about a full maybe 20 minutes before we get the opening logos. There's a prologue, and it is some brutal stuff. Yeah, there is a lot more violence in this, there's a lot more blood, and there's a lot more sex. It's more in line with like Zack Snyder's 300 in many ways. The scribes are very creepy. They use the teeth of killed enemies and put them into a mural for Princess Issa. They're very creepy in this version. This is the complete experience, and I wish that Netflix just released this to begin with, but at the same time, from a marketing standpoint, I can see their concerns. So if blood, violence, language, and nudity/sex is too much for you, well, there's a PG-13 versions, and I see why they made that now. But if you're, say, a fan of Zack Snyder and his filmography, if you somehow mildly enjoyed the first two parts, I recommend checking out the director's cuts. If you're kind of on the fence and didn't like what came before, I don't know if this will really help very much, you know. It does add stuff, but a lot of the flaws that are there are still kind of there in some way. But this is probably the way I'm going to watch Rebel Moon moving forward. Really, I enjoyed parts 1 and 2 together. They're about almost 6 hours. The first one is 3 hours and 24 minutes, and the second part is 2 hours and 46 minutes. And that's counting credits, so give or take, both of them were about 6 hours. I ordered some pizza. I enjoyed them. I love how this is almost like what Zack Snyder said, an alternate viewing experience. You see the same stuff, but there's like different angles and then just different takes, even though it's like the same shot. And I could swear the color timing looked a little bit different. I don't know if that was Adobe Vision on just like the director's cuts, but like it looked just slightly different than the other one. And I have to say the effects looked even better on this version. And we get to see more stuff fleshed out with Korra and her backstory. There's so much wonderful stuff added back into part 1. We get to see the Kali, the woman statue that we saw briefly. We get to see more interaction in history with that statue on the King's Gaze, how exactly the ships warp through the galaxy. We also get to learn more about the Blood Axis. That kind of goes into with the prologue with Arius and his father, and there's more of a through line now with like Noble going after these rebels. Like, it wasn't just an accident that they were there. We know that in the theatrical, but here the flow of it is so much better. And you know, in the theatrical, or should I say the PG-13 version, there is parts when they met Nemesis, the whole spider fight, that's still an awesome fight in this, but there are parts that just felt like they were just like choppy, where it's like, I know they cut out stuff there, and they did. This flows so much more naturally. We get to have some breathing room in between the action with the going from world to world, meeting each character. We also get to see the characters interact within the ship, and that's one thing that I was kind of hoping for, you know. Being a fan of Star Wars and stuff like Final Fantasy and different RPGs and movies and books, like I was wanting to see that, and we do get to see that. Is it enough character development to make me like fully care about everyone? Not entirely, even though we do get their backstories, but I think a lot of that has to do with just the amount of characters you have on screen. I don't think they're as fully fleshed out as, say, Korra or Arius at the beginning. But we get to see more with Korra, her training. We get to see more of the Princess Issa and her father that Cary Elwes played. Oh my God, the content in this is so brutal. I love it. Snyder described it as kind of very Paul Verhoeven-esque. It is like that with a little bit more of like heavy metal comics. And there's some weird stuff in here, yeah. The alien thing's a bit weird. There's some like content here with the way the aliens or certain criminals they run into treat them. Like it's much more adult and it's much more weird and like a sci-fi way. But that's not entirely a bad thing, but it's not going to be for everyone, you know what I mean? But overall, I really enjoyed both these cuts. Part 1, I would probably give a 3.5 out of 5. Part 2, I still kind of feel like it's a 3 out of 5, but then I kind of bump it up a little bit with the extra stuff. So, like, overall, both director's cuts, if I count them as one film as the first part of Rebel Moon, I give it about a 4 out of 5 for this certain experience. I just wonder why didn't they just do this to begin with? I felt like they kind of did a disservice to not only, like, general audiences, but just people in general who are, like, fans of Snyder's previous films and his filmography. They just see that and just like, I don't know if I want to spend that much time after seeing that. I just felt like it was a disservice to release those versions first. But I would like to see what happens with the hint of Princess Issa. There is a moment at the end where I thought certain theories were going to come true in this version that I had and many other people had in the PG-13, and then instead it was like, nah, it was just kind of a weird music scene that was kind of like the Aquaman Icelandic song scene in Zack Snyder's Justice League. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But I love seeing Anthony Hopkins as Jimmy. The action there. The second part with the battle is so much more intense. I do like the extra content. There's moments that I felt were pretty intense for the PG-13 ones and a little bit more realistic, and this is more like more stylized, hyper-violent. But in addition to that, you have slow-mo, but it's not as overused. It's weird. It's like it feels natural. That's one thing I have to say about the PG-13 ones is that they had a lot of slow-mo, and it wasn't bad, but even for like Zack Snyder, just something about it just felt like a little bit too much. And this one, it doesn't feel that much when you get all the other action and crazy stuff going around, you know? And I just really think that this universe has so much potential that I don't think it's fully there yet. Would it have been better as a series? Maybe. I would love to see at least one more movie where we get the Princess Issa or like a hint of what happened to her, you know, have that paid off. But more importantly, I would love to see Belisarius and Korra meet face to face. Just have a full-scale war. That's what I would love to see in the next one if they have a part 3. But if not, these films are unique. They're ambitious. In many ways, I think it's like Sucker Punch, where it may not be the best thing Zack Snyder's ever done, but it's the most ambitious. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I have to respect about him as a filmmaker and then these set of films. And I think the actors did a great job with the material they were given and the world that they created. It felt like a fully fleshed out world here. You could tell right out of the gate that this is what Zack Snyder was going for with this story. And I enjoyed seeing it in this way. And I have to say, it's not for the faint of heart. So if you have a problem with content, you may want to stick with the PG-13 ones. But if you're a fan of Zack Snyder's filmography and you somewhat enjoyed the theatrical, not everything 100% is going to be fixed in these, but it's a lot more enjoyable. And it's a much more fulfilling experience, to say the least. Overall, I am a sci-fi fan, and it's great to see kind of an original sci-fi tale that borrows elements from like Seven Samurai, heavy metal, and Star Wars, you know. In many ways, it's kind of like Dune the past couple of years, where like 1 and 2 aren't bad on their own, but I like them much more together as one story. Even though it's parts 1 and 2, I feel like together this is like the first part of the Rebel Moon saga. And it's nice seeing the whole meaning behind Chalice of Blood and then like a previous Princess Issa. I know they're doing a podcast, but it'd be interesting to see something explored with like a spin-off world or film or show, you know. And then with the title of Curse of Forgiveness, it's nice seeing what Korra has to deal with guilt and forgiving herself for all the horrific things she's done. There's a current theme of forgiveness given all the characters and what they have to go through in the Imperium. And then the Blood Axis, I really love the backstory given there. It had much more of a presence this time around. Everything felt more focused and clear this time around. Korra also had more involvement in the beginning, where in the theatrical or PG-13 she was just kind of like hiding. In this one, she's just like, you don't know what you're dealing with here. I do, okay? So there is that whole like outsider element that was played on a bit more. Overall, you're still gonna have a long sci-fi epic with great action scenes and some intense moments. This is a heavy movie. It'd be very interesting to see what they do next in this universe. And then also, I would love to see what Zack Snyder does after this. That's not like Rebel Moon or Army of the Dead related. Like, he's a filmmaker that, again, I highly admire. And I would like to see what world he comes up with next with his imagination, you know? And kudos to Netflix for making two different versions. This is kind of a unique experience where it's not like studio interference. It's like they went ahead and just did that on their own. I just wish that some of the same love and treatment and hype surrounding the PG-13 ones were given to this, and if this was the one that was released initially. So if by a miracle there is a part 3 and 4, or like at least a part 3, don't do the whole PG-13 thing. Just have a director's cut. Just have that first, or release both the R-rated version and PG-13 versions at the same time. That way people, whatever they want to watch, they can watch it. I think that would be a good alternative. But yeah, again, for anybody who like goes out there and doesn't like Zack Snyder's films or hates Rebel Moon, you're not going to like this. So you're just basically hate watching. Be respectful. People who like or dislike a thing, hey, we're all individuals. We all have different opinions and preferences. And while to me, this is not my favorite Zack Snyder film, I still like it for what it is, and I always see what he does in his work. And for people out there, just be respectful to each other, okay? Just don't knock on somebody because they don't hate something you hate. Don't knock on somebody because they don't love something you love. Just let everybody be, okay? Please be respectful out there. Enough of this toxicity. But people who enjoyed Rebel Moon and happen to check out the director's cuts, what are your thoughts? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Did you enjoy these? What are you looking forward to seeing in another installment if we get one? In the meantime, be sure to check out these videos for more content, and stay safe and healthy, everyone. Till next time.